Welcome to Bitstorm, a comedy game design podcast by two guys who know nothing about comedy nor game design. I'm Ben Slinger, and with me, as always, is Trevor Scott.
Hello.
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 Hello again.
Hello again.
Hello for the third time, and now Beetlejuice is here. So, Trevor.
Yes.
Here we're going to start with something a little bit different this week.
Yes. So we'll go into some click pitch if we have time after my amazing idea that's probably only going to take 5 minutes.
You think it's going to take the whole episode? If it does, it does.
If it does, it does. So let's just talk about what click pitch is anyway. So what click pitch is a game where we both have a random word generator in front of us. On the count of 3, 2, 1 click, we're going to click refresh. We'll take those two words, we'll mash them together, we'll come up with a game design, and then click again if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But first, today we had a little visitor at work. There was someone who left to have a baby, and they brought a baby into the office, and I thought
wow, that was quick. They just left. They left in the morning to have a baby.
Yep, came back and bang,
with a baby.
There's a baby. That's awesome.
Wow.
No, it didn't quite happen like that, but it got.
I hope they were pregnant when they left, because otherwise,
yes,
that's really strange.
So that they ended up getting like everyone sort of talking in the office about babies and who had kids and who didn't, and I started thinking, there's not really been a video game about babies, whether it be, sort of a baby making simulator or, being
I think you'll find there are plenty of baby making simulators.
Simulator.
I see them in ads all the time when I'm on porn sites. No, I get what you're going for. I was going to say there was a game about babies called Babies.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, by the same people who made Dogs with a Z and Cats. So basically, your babies with a Z were just your pets.
Oh.
They crawl around and you'd make them play fetch or something.
So it got me thinking this afternoon about what sort of game would I want to play about that? They could actually go a little bit deeper and a little bit more serious in some parts. Kind of like I was thinking, what was it? That Dragon Cancer? Was it? Where it's somewhat serious and. So
somewhat serious. That's an understatement for that one, but yes.
Extremely serious. So thinking of going in some parts that and some parts cartoony and fun. Okay.
So it's not about cancer, because that is hard to make. That's pretty difficult to make that cartoony and fun. No.
So what it is...
No, you're basically saying a serious game to some degree.
A serious game with some humorous elements, I'm thinking of it kind of like almost a board game sort of idea.
Mm. So so sort of stat based in a way, or like card like actual cards.
Yeah, card
pieces,
based, or I like the idea that each time that you play, and it could just be a competitive multiplayer game in which
trying to make the best baby.
You're playing a couple, and the whole each person is playing a couple as they land on spaces. It's sort of like
each person is playing a couple.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying that it was like a 2-person game. They're playing a couple, but somehow they're competing while making a baby.
No. So I'm thinking you could actually have different cards for miscarriage and that sort of stuff, and sort of bring it up in having a bit of a conversation about these sort of taboo subjects, like where you're not actually able to conceive, and having to go to the doctor and just going down a little bit of the
so you're kind
of
thinking
the more serious side of things, as well as occasionally everything's going to be fine.
Occasionally,
yeah. We had a pretty normal pregnancy. Like my wife and I. Well, she had the pretty normal pregnancy. I just hung along for the ride.
You followed along, yeah. Tagged along.
I did my job at the very start, and then sort of supported her wherever I could. But I like the idea that you can start having those conversations with different people, and the winner is the person that comes away with a baby, but it's also the ride that you sort of go on.
Okay, all right. I like the general idea. I'm not sure about it being competitive, because when you have multiple, it's like, sorry, you had a miscarriage, I win.
Oh no, but it's It's okay. That sounds kind of worse than what I expected to sound.
Well,
but you know what I'm trying to do.
At least one person comes away with a baby. I know what you're trying to do. So, look, when you mentioned this, because we did sort of talk about this a little bit beforehand, this afternoon, one of the things you talked about was
the tutorial guide.
That's not where I was going. Although you can bring that up if you like. But one of the things that you mentioned was like it being in a fantasy world.
In a fantasy world.
And
so I'm thinking wizards and shit.
Wizards and shit. That should be I think that's our like third go-to after VR anthropomorphic creatures is just like put it in a fantasy world with wizards and shit. Yeah, what I liked about the idea was that it's more about it is about the process of trying to make a baby. Like from the very beginning, it's like, okay, a troll couple decides that they want to have a baby. And so you need to like figure out the ovulation cycles of trolls. And that's going to be different than gnomes and it's going to be different than centaurs.
Yes.
And, so depending on your like randomly generated starting character, you can have different challenges of conceiving in the first place. And it could be sort of one of these games where you like figure out the laws of this world, figure out the rules of this world as you go along by fucking. By attempting to inseminate your partner.
Yes. So in some cases, you're going to have like mini games in order to see how satisfied each partner is, sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess
extra bonus, for doing it really well.
Orgasming simultaneously. I mean, we could certainly get into not quite the mechanics, but and I was going to say the intricacies, but not that either. Just the interesting bits of centaur sex, biracial couples. Like it may not just be centaur on centaur. It might be shape-shifting badger on fucking, gnome, pimbly nimblebottoms.
So I did think of a talking badger as the tutorial guide. So yeah,
we should preface that with we've both been binging on Hello from the Magic Tavern,
and it's absolutely freaking amazing. And that's another thing that you should go watch or go listen to.
Yeah, but yeah, I do like the idea of a talking badger as your kind of little Clippy the pregnancy guide.
Yeah. So because it's in a magical world, I like the idea that you still got the same sort of things that happen in, the real world. I do want it to sort of be silly and serious at the same time. So
of course, look, like any good game that, like even a lot of fantasy, it's a mirror of the real world, and you're sort of trying to make a point.
Just being able to have the conversation and by doing it through a little bit of comedy and that sort of stuff. Because one of the people at work was actually saying that he and his wife have been trying for a couple of years, but they've actually had a couple of miscarriages, and it's like that's devastating. But it's something that people don't talk about. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And it was actually a really good conversation. It felt like I actually got to know this guy and his wife a little bit better because she was actually she works on a different team as well, and she was there and talking about it, and just the different sorts of.
I think the stigma around it is definitely lifting, which is great.
Yep.
And we can address that.
And I've got friends who have had to go through IVF and they've been successful on that, and it's fantastic. But it's like, it's heartbreaking when it doesn't
in this magical world, and just because and this is just taking it in a funny direction from your very special episode of Bitstorm direction. What does IVF stand for in this fantastical world? It's like invisible. Invisible vagina fairy. That's what it is. You send that invisible vagina fairy up there to implant the seeds.
No, you got to go to the invisible vagina fairy.
You have to find them. You have to find them. You have to find the tribe of invisible vagina fairies.
You've got to use a dowsing rod. Like, so basically you're sort of going around just...
Trevor, I don't want to hear about your dowsing rod. No, continue. That was a joke. Yeah, tell me about your dowsing rod.
I'm just thinking, you're holding onto the two handles of the stick, and you're just sort of like trying to work out where the
vagina is. No, I mean, the vagina fairies are
where the IVF is. So I think...
Sorry, I was going to make a joke about you holding onto your rod trying to figure out where a vagina is, but anyway, yeah, yeah. So of course, this magical world of I was literally about to say this magical world of phone. Yeah, of course, this magical world. You go to your invisible vagina fairy, and they manage to implant a child within your womb, and then you go to like the necromancer. The gyno. I was going to say the necromancer. You go to the gynomancer.
Oh no!
Who like uses their magical staff to project magic through you and create an image of your child, unborn child, to make sure everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you obviously go through the usual stages of pregnancy. Now, if it is troll babies, the gestational period is about 37 years. So it's a long process, and that, if you happen to randomly generate a troll couple, it's going to be a long game.
Mm-hmm.
But
and it's in real time.
Not real time, but comparatively
37 minutes compared to 9 minutes.
comparatively to
goblins.
The gnomes comparatively to the goblins who have a gestational period of about 11 days, it is going to be a longer game. Now, depending on the type of troll you are, if you're a rock troll, it's going to be a very painful birth.
So it's now pain management.
Well, and there are decisions to be made there. Do you get the?
Do you want a bridge birth?
Exactly. Do you want to have an under your bridge birth in the water of the horrible, stinking river that you protect the bridge for? Or do you go to a hospital? Do you get your magical epidural?
Do you get your midwife? Which, if we're talking Magic Tavern ways, they actually go into your body and like take over your consciousness for a while and experience the birth, and then they're away again.
Well, actually, interestingly enough, in this magical world, a midwife is literally just the middle part. Like, they don't have a head, they don't have legs, but that makes them uniquely experienced to just really feel through your birth.
Yeah. So sorry, we've done all these references to a show that you probably haven't listened to.
I am trying to veer away from that and come up with our own stuff, but we are definitely heavily influenced.
Yes.
And I will cut a few of them.
So as for the graphics of this game, like, it doesn't have to be the sort of board game thing.
It's a text adventure.
It doesn't have to be the board game sort of thing. That was just another idea that I sort of came up with throughout the afternoon. I didn't talk to you about that particular part of the idea, but I thought that could be a little bit randomizing of it.
Look, I think
from
the
cards
idea
and that sort of stuff. But
I think you could bring in some aspects of that, like random elements. You could even, because we haven't really talked about the gameplay as such. It could be that you have like a deck of cards as part of the gameplay where, each sort of month of your pregnancy, and maybe this is where the length of the pregnancy comes in. The more months of pregnancy, the more cards you need to draw, and the more things that could go wrong or right.
So I'm thinking that you've actually got 4 decks of cards.
4 decks of cards.
You've got your trying to conceive cards. You got your first trimester card.
2.
Second trimester cards.
3.
And I wonder if you can guess the 4th one.
I assume it's the third trimester.
No, it's birth.
It's the birth.
See, that was a trick question.
Okay, so different decks of cards where different events, basically.
Yeah, and
can happen at different points.
One of the cards that you could pick up is Visit to the Doctor, means that there's, the doctor has questions about something on the scan or something like that. And it's sort of...
you know what I kind of like?
Yep.
Sorry, I interrupted, but I know what you're getting at. But from the mode of that, because I just started thinking of Monopoly. Because I started thinking about picking up chance cards.
Yeah, same here.
And it was like, visit to the doctor, collect 200 pints of amniotic fluid. I don't know. But maybe it's like those 4 decks are actually one edge of the board. And once you get all the way around the board, like, you give birth.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
But
the modifiers... Well, I was going to say the modifiers around your race and stuff mean you move slower for a longer gestational period. You know, you're much less likely to get a move forward 2 spaces sort of card. So, you know, I'm thinking that you might stay on the same space for quite a few turns.
Yeah, what I'm thinking is you've got maybe a D10 dice.
Okay.
And so if you're, say, a human, if you roll a 3 or higher, you get to move on to 1 more space. If you roll a 10, then you get to move 2 spaces. So it's that sort of thing of if you roll a 1 or a 2, you don't move on it and you just do whatever the space was. If you're a troll,
and they're sort of
if you're a troll, you've got to roll a 9 or a 10 to move on.
Right.
Same rules apply. If you roll a 10, you're going to move forward 2. But if you only roll a 9, then you're going to move forward 1 or something around.
And I guess this comes down to like I mean that probably wouldn't work in a real physical board game because, you know, obviously it would take forever to actually play that game.
Oh yeah.
So maybe it is just around how maybe there's some representation of a sort of air quotes board.
Yep. But I love the fact that the trying to conceive is the hardest side of the board to get off because literally
I think you'll be getting off constantly on that side of the board actually. I mean, by necessity. That's how it works. I know what you mean. And again, like
I think things move a lot slower, a lot quicker when you're down in that sort of area. So,
well, you keep just
I know, just keep on
firing these softballs towards me, which I just did to you. Well, no, what I like about that though is there could be other modifiers again based on the sort of the creature you are. Like, yes, a troll. A rock troll, a bridge troll has, you know, a long gestational period, but they get pregnant like that. Mm-hmm. Like, they just throw a rock in a direction and get someone pregnant because they're made of rocks, and that rock happened to be a semen rock. But, you know, it may be that spider demons have a very hard time conceiving. I think it's all the legs. They just kind of get in the way. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, if you're playing a spider demon, like, then there's going to be a different set of rules around that first edge of the board to turn that corner.
So what I'm liking is, especially some of the cards in like the second trimester, you can play up with some of the typical tropes of the one who's pregnant gets a weird craving.
Yes. And
so his experience points for, you know, having the weird craving and trying new things. And, you know, you can go through a few of those different sort of tropey sort of things. Feeling extra horny.
And there's a lot of different...
Feeling extra horny.
And again, depending on the race, depending on the creature, you have to be careful because there could be some dangerous sexual activities that could affect the baby. Particularly if you're a spider demon.
So I think you can set up your couples. I mean, we've gone the heteronormative sort of things, but you can actually, you've got some sort of control over what sort of couples you actually have. So you can actually have, you know, two gay guys and a surrogate sort of idea. Or you can...
Well, I think there could definitely be configurations like that, and that affects the types of cards you're able to get in at first.
And because it's a digital thing, you're going to be able to, you know, bring a few different cards to the, bring a few different things that are specialized to the people.
Yeah, I hope so. Like that would be ideal to have some different situations there. And I think you could pretty easily say like, oh, this particular card, you know, only applies to same-sex couples, or this particular card applies to couples with a surrogate, or this particular card applies to heteronormative couples.
And you know, you can have lesbian couples with a donor, or people who decide to adopt. They make it through really, really quickly, but they've also, you know, having to deal with, you know, they meet someone
who wants to adopt out their child.
It's sort of like, if you remember the Game of Life, how you could sort of choose your route at the start.
I'm almost picturing it as the Game of Life in a lot of ways. Sort of random events coming up, different starting things sort of affecting aspects of it later on.
Yeah.
But set it in this cool fantasy world, but you know, talk about real issues and tell real stories.
Yeah.
about birth and labour. And
I mean, we've gone through it with our respective partners, and it was a life-changing experience.
Oh, absolutely. Look, it's huge. Yeah, we're both parents. You've gone through it once. I've gone through it twice with the result of three children.
I'm like, no, you went through no, you only went through it twice.
Yeah, look, I think you could make a really interesting game there that dealt with a lot of those issues, which is why we've talked about it for 25 minutes.
Yeah, I think we'll leave that there. But
I think we'll leave it there. But I think there are some good ideas in there,
and it's something that's near and dear to my heart because we were some of the lucky ones, but there's people out there who don't who go through much worse sort of heartache than what we did, and to actually open the conversation is something that I think we should try to do a little bit more.
Yeah,
that was cool.
All right, should we go into some click bitch?
Yep.
Let's do it. We told you all about it at the beginning. I hope you sat through this long. I hope you remember after 25 minutes what it's all about, but we're not going to tell you again, so go back and listen to the start.
Video one click.
Webbing.
Countryside.
Okay.
Some pig.
I was definitely thinking spiders, but have you seen those pictures? You know how sometimes a like swarm of spiders will just take over an entire field, and it's just like webs and spiders for kilometers.
Now I've got to look at this up. Do I really want to see this?
No, it happens in this country.
Oh, yep. Okay, yep. I've seen that before.
So I'm curious. What was your search term?
Spiders overtaking field.
Okay, yeah. So I'm thinking almost like a bit of a, maybe it's like sort of a survival horror or a survival game where some species of spider has just like literally taken over huge swaths of land, and maybe they're like even encroaching in cities and sections have been evacuated. Like a bit of a sort of zombie story, except they're not zombie. Like they're just spiders. They're just a breed of spider that happens to be, they're particularly venomous and particularly, they breed a lot and they build these huge webs or these, it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge web that could even catch a human. It's just, you cannot go through one of these fields because you'll basically touch so many spider webs that they'll be swarming on you in no time and will bite you and kill you. Yeah. So I don't know, just how that could be a little bit different than the usual sort of survival-ish game or horror story.
Now you got me sort of going down the thing of there's these giant mutant spiders that are sort of in like a Rust sort of gameplay where you're going out and scavenging and all this sort of stuff. But if you happen to touch one of the webs, then this massive spider comes down and like tries to capture you or something like that.
Well, yeah, I was almost thinking something similar, but I don't think they have to be massive spiders. I just like the idea that there's just billions of them, right? Like you touch a spider web and instantly like 100,000 spiders have felt it and are coming to attack you. So and just like it's kind of like the piranhas of the spider world.
So you know how much I hate spiders, and
I do.
That I will not go anywhere near. Like in Australia, we've got these massive fucking spiders called huntsmans.
And they're hairy.
And they're really, really disgusting. Supposedly they don't hurt you, but fuck me, they've got like 10 centimeter long, like leg spans. Some of them. And it's just like, nah, I'm not going anywhere fucking near that. As you can tell, I don't usually swear this much, but fuck those spiders. They're really, really scary to me. Go search it.
So we should put them in this game.
So what I was thinking to make me feel better about spiders, like I really don't want to even think about, going across this field and having to sort of, what was that movie, Entrapment, where I'm pretty sure it was Catherine Zeta-Jones who sort of snuck her way through the lasers and all that sort of
through
stuff.
the laser beams?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that...
having to do that around the spider.
I'm thinking rather than having to do that, we've never seen a game, we were talking about dogs and cats and babies. What about spiders? Where you play a spider. And basically it's a beautiful web creating game. You got like this background of this beautiful countryside and all you're trying to do is just create your little web. You can do whatever design that you sort of want, and then you get, flies and stuff coming into your web, and you've got to then wrap them up and take them off to your hidey hole, and then come out and, fix up the hole in the web. And it's basically Minecraft, but for spiders. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I do like that. Let's move away from my idea then.
I'm sorry, but I'm just like, that's just nightmare fuel, and I'm never going to get to sleep tonight if we keep on talking about that.
All right, I won't mention the 100,000 spiders swarming all over your body and eating your flesh. When you said Minecraft but you're a spider, I like that idea because I like the idea of... Because I was just thinking almost this little Zen-like game where you're building your single spider web. But now I'm kind of thinking of it as more of an open, procedurally generated world.
Yeah, so you can...
So you're not just creating a single spider web necessarily, but there are these survival aspects where it's like, oh, night is coming, create my web for the night because I need to be somewhere safe and I need to catch food for the morning. And you could do things like strategically place it near light so you get moths during the night, but maybe you're not big enough, maybe don't have the equipment. I don't know if you can get equipment as a spider if we bring that in, but to deal with the large moths that are in this area or something.
And maybe what I kind of like is that what if you were a alien who's come to an eight-legged alien, and what you can actually do is you can disguise yourself as different spiders. So you can basically twist yourself into different types of spiders. So you can be like a tarantula that has to walk on the ground sort of thing. You can be a trapdoor spider that can build like a trapdoor sort of thing in the ground.
Well,
you can be
I wonder...
like a house spider that can crawl inside a little hole and build like a circular sort of web. And just, basically you're mimicking all these different spiders so that you can really choose what type of spider you want to be.
Well, I wonder if it would
types.
be better actually... Instead of an alien that can change into different spiders, maybe it's just more like, again, that kind of randomly generated or character creator sort of thing. You choose a type of spider, and that's going to affect throughout this game your strategies and your abilities. Mm-hmm. So it's like, all right, I'm going to start a game of webcraft.
Love it.
And this time I'm gonna be a trapdoor spider. And so yeah, instead of building these like nice big webs to capture moths, now it's all right, find an area where there's going to be lots of fucking centipedes and dig my little hole and put my trapdoor there. And because tonight I know I need food, and you wait for them to come. I think this game does need an overall goal though, or at least maybe not a goal, but like Minecraft has, tech trees and lots of hidden stuff where it's like, oh, now I can build a fucking gateway to the netherworld or whatever the fuck it is.
Mm-hmm. Now I can use this redstone stuff to basically create any sort of electronics that I can think of.
Yeah. Well, okay, picture that, but with webs. Wouldn't that be cool? It's like so maybe you have webs with different properties.
I like the idea that the different types of food that you eat adds different properties to the web. So, like, if you eat, like, I'm trying to think of like different sorts of insects that you could eat, like maybe
a praying mantis.
Yeah, praying mantis or something like that makes more sticky webs, or a mosquito adds more lightness to the web. So maybe you don't want to eat too much of those, otherwise it's too light. But maybe
it just floats away.
Maybe you want to be able to travel really, really fast, so you can create like as what some of these spiders in Tasmania were doing, is creating basically a balloon sort of net that basically they go off on the wind, and that's how they travel like huge distances. Yeah,
well, I kind of like the idea of this as like having a tech tree like that, and discovering the different sorts of things you can build. It's like, all right, if I spin 3 meters of the thin floaty web and attach it to, a spun basket of the heavier, more durable web, then that's the recipe for a balloon that I can float through the sky.
If I bite a human, I can become Man Spider.
Yeah, well, that's an Easter egg.
And shoot webs out of my hands.
Totally.
I just wanted to get a Spider-Man reference in there.
I think that's a cheat code.
Man Spider.
Does whatever a man can do. Oh. Yeah, no, I like that general idea. I think Minecraft, but spiders, and having all sorts of different types of web, and being able to attach webs to different things in the environment to basically craft things.
I'm just picturing, you got survival mode, you got creative mode, you got hardcore mode.
Yeah. You can make it a very You can basically rip off Minecraft, totally.
but with smoother graphics, I think. As in, not blocky.
Yeah, I'm not thinking the blocky stuff particularly. You want to be able to render some really nice dew on the webs in the morning. Yeah. Glistening.
Mm-hmm. And really take the stigma away from spiders.
Totally. They show them for the beautiful insect-eating creatures that they are.
Insect eating, that's okay. You almost said insect.
No. That is where I was going. I wasn't gonna.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, click. Printer.
Complement, but with an E. So as in a complement to something, not to complement
So an addition to.
An addition to, yeah.
A printer.
To a printer.
Okay, so I'm not thinking like a digital printer.
No, okay, good. I was heading in this direction too.
I'm thinking sort of the way newspapers were sort of done originally was through like a typeface sort of thing where people had to actually set up the blocks for what you were actually trying to print and that sort of stuff.
A typesetter.
A typesetter. I like that idea of how do you what are the different sorts of things that you can add to that? Maybe it's a a slide puzzle game. I'm just picturing having to set it up as a type, having to put spaces in and that sort of stuff. I think
I definitely was heading in the same direction as you.
Yep.
Going for that sort of typesetting.
Yep.
Pre-digital printer thing. I think, though, that this should be a narrative game about someone working at a newspaper, doing the typesetting, and maybe they're like the person who invents a new thing around typesetting, around newspapers. I don't know. You set it in, the 1800s, I guess? I don't know the period. Late 1800s, maybe?
Late 1800s, early 19s.
Yeah, and it's sort of maybe it's about that move from purely manual typesetting to, I assume they got some kind of automation or something going on. Surely, I guess they didn't have computers still, but like, how are they? I don't know. How are they doing newspapers in the? I guess they're still typesetting for a while.
So I mean, typesetting has been going for many, many years. They were still going in the 1950s. So 1930s through the 1950s, turns out. And then photo typesetting was happening in the 1960s, 70s. So you could even set it in, around the war sort of.
Yeah, I guess so, because it's not like they had computers.
No. So it's cool.
Yeah,
you could actually have have sort of a story going on behind, where you're sort of following this typesetter and his family. Maybe you're an apprentice to him. You're helping him out.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think of how we can use that then to really craft a story and craft a game.
So I'm picturing that you've got this elderly typesetter who's been doing it for years, and he's able to sort of tell stories of sort of things that he's done in the past, big headlines that he's had to sort of set. But
the time that he had to switch the I and the E in friend at the last second. Because you realise that they've done it wrong. It's like, I'm before E!
He's a friend to the end. God.
He's a friend. It says friend.
So I like the new stuff finding out that his son's been caught up for the war. And then, you don't necessarily meet the son, you just hear stories and that sort of stuff. And you can sort of go through some of the narrative stuff with him while also.
Well, I kind of like the idea then that you play a woman, or a girl, maybe even a youngish girl, who obviously, they don't get drafted, but yeah, it sort of takes over as the apprentice from the son, and so now you're sort of learning this stuff. You're continuing the legacy of this elderly typesetter who, had a son late in life, and isn't confident that his son is going to come back in time to learn the craft, and so it could be a real interesting story between these two characters.
Yeah, and I like the idea that there's some typesetting happening. There's errands to go get some more ink and errands to.
Well, yeah, I think it's. I'm pitching
paper
sort of
and
a point and click adventure or a third person adventure, if we want to go 3D.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, these days, if you go like big budget enough, you can create a pretty awesome fucking 3D world for a point and click adventure style game.
I like the idea that, you know, some of the puzzles are, you know, you got to sort of think backwards because of when you're doing this, the typesetting, you're basically using backwards letters and trying to get them lined up correctly.
Right, because they're going to be mirrored on the... Yeah.
So, my head's sort of spinning on that already, how that all works.
Yeah, like I don't actually know enough about typesetting to really make it interesting, but, you know, we do our research.
Yeah. Having to put spaces in
to make this.
And, you know, sort of the tutorials, you're learning where to put spaces and that sort of stuff, and how to sort of set out the front page for the newspaper to get the best sort of...
Well, and I think there could be some interesting story moments that are purely based around the typesetting. Like maybe there are sort of mini games where you have to do the typesetting, and well, I'll sort of, or maybe it's not that you have to do the typesetting as such. Well, I was trying to come up with a way that a story moment is revealed to the player via the sort of the front page of a newspaper coming into place.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So I guess that could be a sort of mini game where you don't actually tell the player what headline they're creating. They just have to do something to create it. Yeah.
So I've been playing a little bit of Golf Story lately. I like the idea of that being sort of a maybe it's an RPG light sort of game, in that your sort of things that you're doing is a little sort of typesetting mini game every now and again. And you can bring it up maybe in other parts of their life that they're doing the same sort of thing of being very careful with how they're placing certain things, but also having you know, conversations with people and having to do little errands for different people around town to try and get the ingredients for the ink and all this sort of stuff during parts. I quite like that idea.
I like that. I think there's some really cool stuff there. Yeah, cool.
Read to one quick.
Yeah. Worse
month.
A worse month. So this is a game where something happens over the course of a month, and then something even worse happens over the course of the next month.
Well, I'm just wondering if it's a game that takes place over the month, and it's like, how could this month get any worse? And it's like every day something bad is sort of happening, and you got to try and keep this person's spirits up. And
okay, so we use month as sort of a time limit on the game, like a structure around the story or around the boundaries of the game.
So,
all right,
I'm just wondering whether the month is actually February. So you got 28 days.
Okay, so you've got exactly 4 weeks. It's nice and clean.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I chose it. But also, I like the idea that this character is the first day of February is the first day that they're sober. So you're actually doing this month to them is the worst because they're literally dealing with having to become sober from drugs
Trevor,
or drinking or something like that. I know.
You're bringing up the heavy subjects this episode.
I know, but I've been watching the sitcom Mum, and that's what's in my head at the moment.
Okay.
But I like the idea that, you know, they see things as getting worse and worse and worse, when in reality it's just they're starting to actually feel and not be able to.
Yeah, look, I really like that general idea. Like, that's sort of, like every day feels worse to them, but it's all about
perspective,
pushing through, making it through. Yeah, the perspective, and you know, by March 1st, they can kind of have a bit of a revelation of, like, maybe it's that they literally, their goal is just to make it through February without having a drink.
Yep,
and every day seems harder.
Yeah, and
but
you can throw
throw
like financial pressures at them. You can throw, you know, other things that are going on in their life.
Yeah, well, I kind of like the idea, and again, we go to this well a lot. Although in this case, I'm not really thinking the core gameplay as such, but more the framing structure of Papers, Please, where it's very much this like day by day, and sort of at the end of the day, there are these financial pressures where you kind of have to make decisions about. And maybe in this case, it's not specifically about like your family or whatever. You know, it's a bit different than Papers, Please in that way. But just that it's framed around a day and there are tasks you have to do in that day. And what we do is, we do make each day worse than the one before because things are getting harder. You're going through withdrawal symptoms. You're not able to focus. You're finding, look, I've never been an alcoholic, but, there are certainly things that would make that incredibly difficult. And so even though you're doing very similar tasks every day, there are these little things that come up, or big things that come up, that really affect how your day goes. And through that, we could tell a story, like against, in that Papers, Please sort of way, it could be that there are just these sort of recurring characters that come up in your life. Whatever it is that that the day-to-day is actually doing, I don't know, what sort of job could this person have that could make for an interesting sort of backdrop and menial task in a way, but still somewhat challenging, where they meet people and it can tell a bit of a story. Maybe they're a fucking bartender.
No, I was actually thinking, yes, that's not a bad idea, but what about parking inspector?
Okay.
So you got people who are getting angry at you for like giving them a fine when the meter's just expired, sort of thing.
I mean, I guess it could be like a grocery store checkout. There are lots of things where there's still sort of, you have to be paying a little bit of attention to the job. There are things to sort of check and cross-check in that Papers, Please sort of way. But the main thing is actually about the people who come through and who you see every day and your experience with what you're doing. And we could do a similar thing where you kind of ramp up the complexity of the actual gameplay every day in different ways. And maybe that even relates to the difficulty you're having, focusing or
well, just the idea that you got a quota of how many fines you got to give out for the day.
Yeah, and I like the idea that people attempt, like, there's temptation. Maybe it is that maybe having a drink makes the next 3 or 4 days easier in certain ways. And there are people, fucking little, for some reason I'm thinking this is set in Britain, as I was going to say, like teenage chavs come by and
what I'd love is that you don't go to an AA meeting as such, but you've got a sponsor that you can sort of call to try and not have the drink. You've basically got a meter that you can't really control, but you've got to try and do something to get your mind off it. I like the idea that it's not something that you can control, because having an addiction.
That's an interesting idea. You could have a bunch of different methods that this person could use to take the focus off their desire for a drink, but that also affects their job, right? Like. Yep. And then that's going to affect the financial situation. So, they can take an extra break to, I don't know, maybe they've taken up smoking instead, which isn't a whole lot better, but it's a different
thing.
So, they take more smoke breaks, or, they've got a fucking stress ball that they sit and use, but that takes up one of their hands. And so they can't do their job quite as effectively, or, a few different things you could have there, but giving them that temptation in a gameplay sense that, having a drink is going to help them make more money, right? Like in the short term.
But the idea is that, rather than having the person be able to choose, it's something that the AI just chooses for them, because it's the AI as such is like the urge to drink. As such.
I think maybe once you get past a certain point, I think maybe there's a point of no return. I think there is the player choice before that to say, fuck it, I'm just going to have a drink because otherwise I'm not going to survive this month, even just gameplay wise. Like, I'm not going to have the money, because it could be things like, and this could be addressing poverty in interesting ways too, because if you don't make enough money, you can't buy enough food to actually get the sustenance you need to then actually do your job well enough to get enough money to get enough food, There's sort of these vicious cycles. And so if you're also going through withdrawal symptoms from alcohol or other drugs, it could be incredibly tempting in the short term to say, well, if I deal with those cravings, that addiction right now, then I can do my job more effectively, make more money, and it's all right. I'll get on top of the addiction again. I'll quit again.
I really want that addiction to not be a choice though. That's the thing. I think you can have some choice, but I think it also has to be an urge, because.
Well, but that's what I mean. I think we can codify it in the gameplay.
Yeah.
In a very interesting way, where, You're right. It's not. It can't just be. Well, this is the logical choice. It's not like min-maxing out your gameplay.
It's like,
On day
won't do it and
day
we'll see how I
17,
can
I'll
go.
just take a. On day 17, I'll take. Yeah, it's got to be. For one, it's somewhat of a slippery slope. Because it's not like you can just. Oh, I just had a drink, and now the next few days are going to be fine. And then it's back to how I was before. It's like, no, now you're back to square one, and actually you've gone back further, kind of thing. It would definitely be a challenging balance.
I think one of the things I'm picturing is that you go into, say, a corner store where they happen to sell liquor, and you're talking to the clerk, and as you're talking, I see, think of the four-way sort of conversation options. They keep on flashing between ask for liquor and that sort of stuff. And
like they're changing.
They're changing as sort of like if you happen to click right as it says ask for liquor, that's what you're asking for. And then the urge gets a little bit harder, and it's very hard to actually not drink.
Well,
so
and I think that's based on how strong your withdrawal symptoms are at that time, based on other different
but of
things.
course, then you can alleviate some of that by maybe calling your sponsor. And they can sort of talk you through it, and that may calm down the meter a little bit.
Well, and I think it will come down to just in general how well your life is going. Like, if you are a bit more financially stable, then you're probably less likely to want to drink because, from what I've read, a lot of addiction does actually stem from just bad life situations. And I'm not saying it's entirely that. And I think if we were to actually make this game, we'd, want to do a lot of research and bring on some experts. But, I think that could definitely factor into it, and and from a gameplay sense, bringing it down to the complete basics, it could just affect like the frequency of how often those options change. So if you're having a good day, it's like it ticks past every half second, and that's a pretty easy for a experienced gamer, that's a pretty easy timing puzzle. But if you're having a really bad day, it's actually flicking past every 1/10 of a second, and it's really luck of the draw.
Yeah, it's sort of like a Wheel of Fortune sort of thing that you're spinning a wheel. And it's like tick, 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 tick.
Yeah. Am I going to get drunk and ask for liquor? Yeah,
No.
exactly.
They're drinking.
Yeah.
I know I went for a very serious game there, and I'm sorry. It should have been a little bit funnier, but it's just where.
No, look, I think that actually brought up some really interesting gameplay mechanics. Ways that you could do that.
I'm really
As usual, we should put a disclaimer on this, like we do for most serious games, because we have both led incredibly privileged lives. We've never had to deal with anything serious in our entire life. Basically,
yeah, pretty much.
We're probably not the people to make a game like this. But I think that given the right creators, given the right research and stuff, I think it could be a quite interesting way to communicate these issues through gameplay. Yeah,
I really like it. 3-2 on click for our last one.
Yeah.
Keeping
radiation. Keeping radiation. This could be a zoo type of game.
Okay.
Where you're like building a zoo. So hence keeping, right? Zookeeping.
Mm-hmm.
But it's set in like a post-nuclear winter world. Yeah, like a post-apocalyptic nuclear world. Whereas all these like mutated animals.
Jesus Christ.
So just think of the types of challenges that could come from running a zoo in a nuclear winter, nuclear aftermath, and the types of animals that would that would include. I think there are some interesting things there. Yes. Particularly around breeding those animals. And choosing how much more radiation to expose them to.
No.
To really create mutated things that people will then pay money to see.
Oh, no. God.
But, I'm thinking that typical kind of, top-down zoo, roller coaster tycoon, zoo tycoon kind of view where you're literally creating the enclosures and...
God.
Yeah, like...
My head is hurting from this. If you know what I mean.
But I think there's some interesting things around, what sort of enclosure do you have to build to make sure a mutated monkey crossed with a crocodile head, can't escape, but is still comfortable.
What sort of food do they eat?
Yeah, that too. And maybe you have to literally mutate other creatures to feed, your sort of higher in the food chain mutations.
Oh God.
create a bit of a kind of economic crafting chain there, or like a food chain of, all right, so I need, this much radiated grain to feed to my sheepdogs, which are literally like sheep crossed with dogs.
Yep.
Woolly dogs with 7 legs, because then I slaughter them, feed them to the lions that have, 7 rows of teeth. Apparently 7's the number. Yeah, so you get a bit of a food chain going of these mutated animals. And maybe there's a bit of a, procedurally generated kind of thing in there too, where the mutations that you add can kind of add up over time. You can do some breeding. I mean, kind of. I don't think you're actually
creating them.
I don't think you're creating them. I think it's all through mutation.
It's like selective breeding. You got a crocodile and a monkey to fuck.
Totally, and it's only through the radiation that apparently
it somehow worked.
The offspring was viable.
Oh, God. I'm actually going to stop you there and click again.
All right.
Redraw click.
Fine. Startle.
Condemnation.
Condemnation and startle.
What if, in this world,
okay,
I'm thinking that, like, the king or the emperor of this world got startled at a surprise party and is now condemned surprise parties all over the world. Basically, I just like the idea of this guy, like, not wanting to be ever surprised. So, basically, if you startle anyone, it's punishable by death.
Right. Okay.
What do you think? Could you go anywhere with that? Or at least
look from a
surprise parties?
From a world building point of view, I like it. I'm just having trouble thinking about how it would turn into a game. Because does it come around then just like announcing yourself as you come into rooms to make sure everyone knows you're around?
So what I want you to think about is just come on this journey with me, play with me,
all right,
as it were.
I'm with you. Yes, and
you work in the police department that has to investigate these sort of crimes of startling people.
Okay.
So you start off as a beat cop sort of thing. So you're sort of going around just checking that people aren't being startled, and you can sort of let people off with warnings if someone got a little bit startled and that sort of stuff. So you can just sort of play around with that. But then there's actually like a serial startler. Like someone who just continues to break into people's houses, startle them, and then leave. And so you're sort of following, trying to investigate this serial startler.
All right. So I'm just trying to think of a world where nobody is ever surprised by anything or anyone, or at least I guess surprise. Like,
so I'm picturing a world in which it's sort of like a futuristic world in which people have actually like. Technology companies have created like a camera that you can put on the back of like your shirt so you can see who's behind you at all times, like just by looking at like a tablet that you're always holding so you can't be startled by someone coming up behind you.
I feel like it'd have to be like a Google Glass type thing where it's in your peripheral vision at all times. It kind of gives you 360-degree peripheral vision.
But I just love the idea that they've got to carry a tablet.
But then they're going to be looking down at it all the time and be startled by people directly in front of them.
Can you see a game sort of forming around this now though, with the with you working as a police?
Okay, maybe it's a VR game.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
because I feel like there's some mechanics there around not letting anyone get too close to you without you having seen them, and strategies for that involve elaborately placed mirrors and cameras.
And you continuously got up in the corner, like a view of what's behind you because. You've got your camera on.
Well, it would be really interesting to mess with VR players in a way, like to see how to mess with the sort of perspectives of VR to see if you could get that kind of 360 awareness to of a VR player.
So what I'm actually thinking is this is a game in which if you do get jump scared, you can literally arrest the person.
Okay.
You get jump scared by a cat, you shoot it.
Oh God.
Yeah, I'm picturing like a kid sort of runs out and startles you, but you sort of let him off with a warning because it's a kid.
Yeah,
but you can
don't shoot the kid. I think it would be challenging. I think having, I don't know. I'm trying to think then how, because yeah, I mean, jump scares in VR are a cheap thing in that so many games have done it now because it's very easy to be startled by something that jumps towards you in VR.
I think that you wouldn't do one of those sort of jump scares, but you can sort of have, like, you hear a noise in an alley and then therefore you sort of start creeping down the alley and you've got your gun drawn and you're going down trying to see if someone's actually, trying to lure people in to startle them. I know. I reckon as a world, it's kind of interesting. It's very different to our world.
I think it's true. I think it's just difficult to make a game out of. Because how do you even determine that someone's been startled? It's just how close someone gets before.
How do you determine if someone's being robbed? How do you determine if someone's been murdered? Something happens.
I mean, they're dead.
And there's a cause and reaction. So in this case, if someone's scared, and they go, I got startled by this person, well, then you're going to.
Well, but how do you investigate? Like,
you look back at their camera and you see what happened.
I'm just trying to think of how that translates to gameplay though. I think let's do one more because I don't want to end on this one.
Okay, one more.
All right, 3, 2, 1, click.
I already clicked.
Tailored
choice.
All right, so something around clothes.
Mm-hmm.
And the choice, maybe it was something where clothes have some sort of gameplay effect. So the types of clothes that you're wearing, so maybe this is a world where if you're wearing formal wear, you have one set of abilities. If you're wearing casual wear, you have another set of abilities. If you're wearing a ball gown and it's a platformer.
God. I don't know. 3, 2, 1, click.
Yes.
Message.
Extinction.
Ooh. Time travel game.
Oh, okay.
You get a message through like this. I'm sort of thinking the same sort of time travel that like the Lake House had, in which it was just through letters and shit. You get a message saying that the world is headed for extinction, and you can stop it. What do you think?
Okay, so it's basically all right. And so, how did the Lake House work? They just put letters in a letterbox, and they travel through time.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe if you send emails to like this certain account, it turns out that that's going to the future, and you're receiving them back from the future.
You receive an email, and it's like from 17 days in the future, and it's from yourself.
Right.
So
maybe this is one of those games like a bit of an Orwell or a bit of an Emily's Away, where it's like a desktop, right? It's all played on your desktop through emails and websites. I like that idea of basically stopping a or stopping or somehow escaping from a cataclysmic event.
Yeah.
That is going to cause the extinction of the human race.
So I'm picturing like a story kind of like 12 Monkeys. I'm picturing, these other sort of things where you've got some sort of event that's coming in just 17 days. So it's got a very short time limit.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore you're sort of sending yourself some clues as to what you need to achieve on each day.
Ooh, I like the idea that maybe the first email you get isn't from 17 days in the future. It's from 5 days in the future. Or maybe, maybe the first one you get is from 17 days in the future, but then the next day you get one from 5 days in the future. And so you have to remember on the 6th day to send an email to yourself. Otherwise you've created a paradox and like fucked up the whole time-space continuum.
Mm-hmm. Or it's, that whole alternate universe sort of thing that you're just getting emails from a different universe, but they just happen to be similar things.
Well, I feel like that makes it a bit too easy to just brush off then.
I do kind of like the 17 days in the future because it's basically something so catastrophic is going to occur that it's ripped like a hole through time and space.
I mean, It's basically going to be that Trump hits the big red button, right, and fires off all their nuclear weapons at once.
God. So with this sort of thing, I'm picturing maybe some little hacking mini games. I'm picturing some kind of like maybe even Hacknet.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of that sort of thing where maybe each day. Yeah, I wonder if it's that there is an actual fixed time limit, and depending on the different tasks or the different actions you take in that day, you'll get closer to the solution. And, maybe it's one of those particularly challenging games where or just there's a bunch of different endings, right? Depending on whether you get there in that time frame or not. And maybe you'll want to replay it to know, oh, maybe I'll try, on day 3, I'll talk to this person who's contacting me rather than this other person and see, what path that takes me down.
Yeah.
To sort of gather enough evidence within that time frame.
What I do like is that you've got 17 days to do something. But if you can't do it in those 17 days, you can send an email detailing the things that you didn't quite get done.
Oh, back to yourself.
And then that's...
gives you like so that's like New Game Plus.
And basically it's now, okay, these are the things that you need to do this time.
Yeah, you've started off, yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
As well as the other things that you need to sort of do. So you can sort of change, I'm thinking in sort of a looper sort of idea in which there were different universes. If you remember the movie, the way they tried to actually explain it was with 2 different universes. Well, this one you can just do multiple universes, but also sort of have a cause and effect thing happening at the same time.
Yeah, well, look, we probably don't need to go into the details of how the time travel's working.
Just the idea that if you don't get it done, you can kind of Zelda Majora's Mask it back to the start just by sending an email.
Yeah, I do like that idea of sending some data back to the start and kind of giving it's almost a bit of a roguelike then, where you kind of each time you run through it, you're able to send a bit more data back to start off at a slightly better position.
Yeah, so you may actually be able to write a program that does the majority of the work that you've done in this first arc.
Right, but there could be some limit to like if you don't start sending that back soon enough, you're not going to get the whole all of that program, all of that code back.
Yeah,
because it's it's a particularly low bandwidth way of sending data to the
96 baud modem.
Well, I'm thinking you're having to like somehow encode individual photons or something, right? Or neutrinos or some shit, chronotons.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes a while. You have to have it started early enough before the actual cataclysmic event to get it back intact.
So,
otherwise you're just giving your past self a whole new time-consuming task to do to try to decode it.
What I'm liking about it actually is the idea that you can only send back an email when this time rip event has sort of happened. Because basically...
Oh, yeah, okay.
This event happens, it just so happens at the server farm in which you're connected to. So you can send an email through the server farm and it connects to 17 days ago.
Right. Is that a new Amazon service? They're bringing out all sorts of stuff all the time.
Yeah, so I know. I reckon that's got some fun stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. All right, so I think we're going to end it there tonight. Thank you for joining us this week on Bitstorm. If you want to find us on the internet, we are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Bitstormcast on all of those. We have a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Bitstorm. We're on YouTube, where we've done a few videos. We haven't done it in a while, but maybe we'll get back to that soon.
Yeah, maybe.
Although, hey, we did... I don't know if they keep the archives up, but we played Jackbox with the Inconsolables.
Fuck, that was fun.
On Sunday night. That was a lot of fun. Go and check out, I think, twitch.tv/inconsolablesau. And we are also on Podchaser, podchaser.com/Bitstorm. Go there, leave us a rating and a review, add us to a list, do some other cool shit that's coming real soon.
If you've got Apple products... feel free to check out iTunes and Apple Podcasts and all that sort of stuff to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. Check out our website, www.bitstormcast.com.
The other one's working now.
Is it?
Yes.
You got it working again, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
We'd like to plug our friends at the AGPN, the Australasian Gaming Podcast Network. Search for hashtag AGPN on Twitter or the Australasian Gaming Podcast Network Facebook page. And finally, we'd like to thank Kuradust for the song Amount Defines off of the album Containment Failure.
So thank you again for joining us this week on Bitstorm. I'm Ben Slinger.
I'm Trevor Scott, and I think I might have found the invisible vagina fairy.
Sweet. We can make a fantasy baby.